Chapter 11. Rise up, start fresh. See the bright opportunity in each new day. Lacey's story. My story started out before I was even born. My biological mother was raped, and that is how I was conceived. Back in those days, an unwed mother was shunned no matter what the circumstances were. So my mother was sent to a home for unwed mothers, and that is where I was born. I was sent to an orphanage and stayed there for 9 months. Then 2 of the best parents in the world adopted me and took me to Edmonds. At a very young age, a family member started molesting me. Now this was in the early 1970s, and we did not talk about child abuse then like we do today. I did not know for many years that this kind of abuse was not going on in everyone's household. When I found out, I ran away from home. When my parents found me, they would bring me back home. But I would just leave right away again. This went on for years, and I lived in many group homes and foster homes. When I turned 18, I was totally out of control, using drugs and alcohol to numb all the pain. I met David when I was 20 years old. He introduced me to intravenous drugs, and I began shooting cocaine. My life literally began spinning out of control. Over a 2-year period, he made me commit endless crimes to support our drug use. During this time, I became pregnant with my first child. I was so deep in my addiction that nothing changed. Then I was arrested. Looking back now, that was a true blessing. It was probably the only reason my beautiful baby girl was born healthy. I gave birth in prison and had to watch her leave 24 hours later. About 3 months later, I was released, and David was there to pick me up. I had a needle in my arm within 3 days. David, our daughter Tricia, and I left Washington State and headed out on a cross-country crime spree. We ended up in Colorado and got on our feet for a while, but that did not last long. Soon we started using cocaine again. By this time I had gotten pregnant again, and we were still using drugs. We eventually headed back home to Washington, and we stayed with some friends who also were deep into cocaine. They lived in a trailer in a junkyard. Our lives consisted of using dope and doing crime to get dope. I gave birth to my second amazing daughter, and 6 weeks later I was arrested. This time I went to prison for 3 years, and I was able to place my children in foster care with Catholic Community Services, and was so blessed with the most amazing foster parent whom I will never forget. She became my best friend. My kids called her Carla Mom, and she was a blessing from God. It turned out that going to prison was a blessing from God, too. I was able to get clean and get my brain working again. I took every parenting class I could and any drug treatment that was available. Most importantly, I went to church whenever possible, and that changed my life. When I was released from prison, I got my children back right away and got a great job. I met my amazing husband, and 17 years of absolute happiness went by. My husband had a beautiful daughter from a previous relationship. I had 2 daughters, and together we had a son. We had the normal ups and downs that any family has, and I thought my drug days were long gone. I rarely thought of them. Then in a very short time, my best friend Carla Mom passed away. I had a head injury on the job and started having grand mal seizures. My daughter was raped in the hallway of her middle school, and we had a house fire. Now that's a lot for anyone to handle, but I kept pushing and got everyone into counseling. I tried to deal with my own ailments, but it was difficult because I was having many seizures a day. Throughout all of this, my wonderful family stayed as supportive as possible. After getting through these difficulties, everything started calming down. I forgot to mention that my son was born with severe asthma, which caused him to be hospitalized at least 200 times before he started kindergarten. We all handled this like champs also. I remember climbing into his crib in the hospital and sleeping with him under the oxygen tank so he wouldn't be scared. In time, it seemed that my son had grown out of his asthma. Then one morning his legs were severely swollen with edema. After many tests, we found out that he had nephrotic syndrome, which is a severe kidney disease. Again, we were making many visits and stays in the hospital. When my son was better and back in school, I ran into someone I had known many years earlier in prison. She showed me a crack pipe, and I was hooked immediately. I was able to keep a resemblance of normality for a while, but that did not last long. Before I even realized it, I had left home and was living on the street, going from motel to motel smoking crack. It had become a way of life. Whenever I would start thinking of my kids, I would just smoke more to numb the pain because it hurt so bad. Getting hooked on crack is the worst thing I've ever experienced. It is a vicious cycle, and I was unable to jump off. I just kept continuing to numb myself by smoking as much as I could. Now, this whole time, my family was putting out missing persons reports and trying to look for me any way they could. I can't explain to you how much it hurt me, but I was so addicted I couldn't stop. I was homeless on and off for 8 years, and I did things I never would have thought I could do. Periodically, I would try to get clean, entering different types of clean and sober housing or going into treatment. I knew I didn't want to be out there, but the draw of crack was unbearable. I would get clean for a month or two and then end up using again. That caused my children even more pain. They already were so confused because I had gone from super mom to crack mom overnight. I still have a problem talking about the pain I caused my family, but they never gave up on me. Over the years, I continued to try to get clean and sober by going to different places. Each time I relapsed, it became more and more painful. One time when I relapsed, I felt so bad about hurting my family again, I took some pills, overdosed, and ended up in the hospital. The doctors kept me there for 2 weeks and then sent me to an 18-month drug and alcohol treatment facility. I stayed there for 7 months, the longest I had been clean for years. One day I got mad and left the facility, and my hell continued. This pattern continued for 8 years. All that time I was homeless, addicted, and miserable. I was staying in a hotel in Linwood, and I was so tired I started to pray. God sent me my sister to come and see me. I had not seen her for quite a few years, and when she came to my motel room, we talked for hours. She told me she had been praying for me for a long time and with her entire church. Her words really hit me hard, and I decided I wanted the happiness and peace I saw in her. It took another month or so, but then I went home. My daughter came and picked me up, and I stayed at a friend's house for a few nights before moving into an apartment with a friend. The most important part of the whole story is that my sister Janice started picking me up every Sunday to go to church with her. When I started reading the Bible and praying, everything started falling into place. I cannot articulate the love I have for Jesus Christ because he died on the cross so many years ago. I am saved, clean, and a sober woman today. It has been a difficult journey, but the rewards are countless. I have my whole family back in my life. I have 4 amazing adult children and 5 grandchildren. I am a leader for Celebrate Recovery meetings and very involved in our church. All of this was made possible through Jesus Christ. I tried every way possible to get clean, and nothing worked. The only way I was successful was turning it all over to Jesus. I finally released my life to him. I realized that when I was in charge of my life, I did nothing but screw things up. When I put Jesus in charge, everything started getting better. My sister, daughter, and I all got baptized together. I have started going to college to be a drug and alcohol counselor, and so far I have a 4.0 GPA. All my thanks and credit goes to Jesus Christ. Years ago, a very good friend of mine named Pastor Judy said I should tell others my story. I had been praying for a while for the opportunity to share my story with others so maybe someone else would hear it and be helped by it. God truly answers prayers because here I am writing this so others can read it. God bless you all, and may you always know there is hope and salvation through Jesus Christ.
Reflection. How does this story make you feel? Have you or someone you know had similar experiences? If you could forgive those who have harmed you, what might be different in your heart and life today? Forgiveness is a choice. This formula will help you to process the unforgiven areas of your life. Number 1, write down everyone who has hurt you. And you can pause this if you want. Number 2, write down as if you were speaking to each one what he or she did and how that behavior affected you and your life. Number 3, write God a letter asking Him to help you forgive. Number 4, write a letter to each person forgiving him or her of the behaviors, words, and actions that harmed you, not to be sent. Number 5, write yourself a letter and forgive yourself for holding on to hurt and resentment. Number 6, write yourself a letter forgiving God, yourself, and all others. And finally, number 7, now receive complete healing and give yourself permission for a fresh start and rejoice. It's a new day.